All right, we are recording. So, welcome everybody to this highly challenging webinar. This is Lights, Camera, Action, and we are going to hear from Darcy, Vigno Beery, and
Yes.
also Stacy Barton, and they are professors at Metropolitan State University in Denver. They also have history that includes what looks to me like a lot of Hollywood. So they bring these amazing resumes with famous names like was it Kevin Smith and Disney. And anyway, I'm so excited about this, and I'm so glad we got this to work. So I would like to let them briefly introduce themselves and just thank everybody. And definitely thank to both of you for agreeing to be our presenters for today. Your session at the summit was widely praised, and I got many requests to have you all do a webinar for us. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to you and mute myself and wipe the sweat from my brow because I was a little
Okay.
nervous here.
Okay, so you can hear us all right?
I hear you fine. Anybody else out there? Okay.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much for having us. We did present at Summit 2018. We're really excited about our topic because I come from the technical writing side and Stacey comes more from the video production side. And the chance to marry our two areas in a topic of interest was just really exciting for us. So thank you for inviting us to the IDL SIG. We're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. We would like to welcome you to Lights, Camera, Action, Exploring Video Basics for Non-Production Professionals. I am Darcy Vigno Beery, the Assistant Professor of Technical Writing, and my colleague, Stacy Barton, is the Assistant Professor of Video Production, and we are from the Journalism and Technical Communication Department at Metropolitan State University of Denver. In order to discuss generational preferences for video consumption, I'd like to first begin just by briefly laying a foundation for our understanding of the generations and where they come from. As I've written in previous papers, there is no scientific method used to portion off generations. They're just loosely grouped around significant political, social, or economic events experienced by a group during their formative years, which can impact their decisions for the rest of their career. These events can be localized to a region or be experienced by an entire culture, but they are specific to that culture. That being said, as businesses continue on the paths of globalization and technological innovation, our generational experiences will continue to intersect at more points. When we look at generational charts, we see different authors will have different bracketing years around each generation. This is why we acknowledge that the boundaries can be fluid around the very same events. Compounding that confusion of where the generations start and stop is the fact that there is also no one definitive source for naming a generation. TV news broadcaster Tom Brokaw named the greatest generation when he wrote his book entitled The Greatest Generation. The Census Bureau is largely credited with naming the baby boomers because of post-war rise in births. And Gen Z is said to have been named by an online contest hosted by USA Today in 2012. Two other qualities that generations share are that it is generally acknowledged that if you strongly identify with another person, a sibling, a cousin, a friend, you can actually share their generational attributes and identify with their cultural events stronger than with your own. And secondly, when considering the learning, training, and communication preferences of each generation, we have to bear in mind that we should always try to avoid making individual assumptions without getting to know people. Here are some of the generations as I have defined them in my research, and we'll use this truncated chart to guide our discussion. Familiarity with technology and ease of adoption increase across the chart until we reach the apex in what is referred to as our first true digital natives, Generation Z. Generational learning preferences are most closely linked to the formal education style we grew up with and our access to emerging technologies. Although we have all heard the stories of people who drop out and experience great success, even they formulated their learning preferences this way. Learning styles have a large impact on the informational preferences. Most people are familiar with the basic four: visual, verbal, oral, and physical. From self-reflection, we probably know our best and probably second best method for receiving information. And we probably gained this insight in school when we discovered whether we preferred to listen to the lecture, take notes, or participate in some way with the material. And normally at this point, in a conference setting or in a classroom setting, I would ask the audience how many people know their preferred learning style. Obviously, we can't do that here in a webinar, but I will tell you from experience, about 98% of the people shoot their hands up immediately. Most folks have identified their preferred learning style. So we know that learning styles are innate to each of us, that they can be mixed, showing learning strengths by more than one method. But sometimes we forget that they're also changeable, meaning that we can assess a situation and choose a style that better suits that situation, like choosing hands-on over visual for a painting class. Or we can forget that learning styles are expandable. Whether it's our dominant style or what we would consider to be our weakest, we can increase our abilities by exercising them in a variety of learning situations. A 2012 article explained generational learning preferences this way. Baby boomers born between 1944 and 1965 received information in a highly structured and sequential manner as represented by this linear graph, whereas Gen Xers born between 1964 and 1977 were raised with a slightly more fluid model based on traditional lectures and the incorporation of small group activities, which allowed learning to evolve organically from student experiences, such as we see in this diagram. This evolution continued with millennials and Gen Ys, those born between 1975 and 2004, who experienced greater flexibility afforded them by the rapid rise in technology. This diagram depicts the decrease in traditional learning with group activities and the increase in technology-based individual learning. So if you've ever wondered what's going on with your millennial coworker, this is what they're dealing with. These graphics are from a 2017 Adweek article about generational viewing habits for videos on YouTube. Generations X, Y, and Z self-reported their viewing habits daily and several times a week for the top two categories, and their combined influence is 66% for Gen Xers, 78% for Gen Ys, and 90% for Gen Zs. I think we can safely say that we know where the kids are, but where are we? Have the content creators found the best way to reach their audience? Or are we demanding that they return to our comfort zone for learning? We believe that video is not only a generational preference, but also a great tool for leveling the playing field and equalizing opportunities across the board, because video can be scaled to meet individual or group goals, and video can be set up to take advantage of multiple, if not all, learning styles. Video can be watched and listened to and rewatched at will. Videos can be paused for note-taking or have embedded content like quizzes. Video is an extremely flexible medium for businesses and consumers. Let's take a minute to examine a few myths about incorporating video in our learning materials. Most assume that it is too hard to make a video and that video equipment and processes are too expensive. And my colleague will address these points in just a moment. But let's face the worst myth of all, the one that I think can lose us an entire generational audience if we don't address it. The myth that video is just not necessary. There's a generational preference for it, a generation waiting for it, and we can't afford to continue excluding them. As for corporate ROI for video, there are diverse metrics for measuring, and there are diverse variables to measure. Too many to be addressed here, but we can say that you will be able to tailor your reporting for whatever your business's concerns are, particularly around materials for onboarding, supplemental training, break-fix articles, best practices, and most importantly, for curating institutional knowledge as generational turnover continues. Before we move into concept creation and basic script writing, though, let me reiterate that video is a medium which fosters clear and demonstrable concept comprehension for end users and benefits the company by creating accessible, updatable content in a recognizable pattern, ensuring enrichment of the user experience for all targeted audience. Now, let's move to concept creation. From the 7 steps for a creative concept, we have pared down to 5 essential steps for a business concept. Number 1, what need? What exactly is the message? Have you clearly defined the problem, process, or policy to be communicated? Number 2, who? Who is the target audience, and how do they learn, and where do they learn? Number 3, why? With a clear objective, metrics can be successfully established for any business. Number 4, how? What strategy will meet your needs? A product demonstration, SME interview, quizzes, exams? And number 5, what content? This will include a shot list, dialogue, products or locations as needed. And Stacy will discuss these in more detail. This is an example of a basic entry in an AV script, which stands for audio video script. The first line, int conference room day, is called a slug line. Its formula is always type of location, specific location, and time of day. Type of location can be interior or exterior, indicated by the INT or an EXT. Specific location is where the talent will be, and time of day is usually just day or night, but special lighting requests could include sunrise or film noir, for example. Next we see, also on the left side, people mill about. This is the video column and will include everything we want to see: SMEs, tools, products, computer screenshots, on-screen text or video graphics, everything. On the right side, voiceover, panel chair, blah, 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 blah. This is the audio column. Everything we must say goes into this column. The 2 columns must line up so we always know what is being seen and what is being said. In this case, it is a voiceover because the video is not of the speaker. The formula here is speaker's name and then dialogue. Lastly, we see cut to. That lets us know that we are changing scenes. Now, to continue taking us into the world of video production, I would like to turn this over to my colleague, Professor Stacy Barton.
Thank you very much, Professor Beery. Okay, so when we talk about scripting, we're referring to the first stage of video production, the writing process, where we lay out the story and begin to pre-visualize the look and sound of the video. Next comes pre-production, the planning, organization, and logistics stage. The next step is production, where all images and sounds are recorded. Well, kind of stuck here.
Let's see if I can get you on.
Thank you, Vicki. There we go. Let me see if there we go. So okay. I do have access now. Thank you.
Great.
So the next step after that is post-production. And that, of course, is also referred to as editing, where all video and audio is sequenced in a timeline. After which, finishing touches like titles, transitions, effects, and even extra soundtrack elements like music or maybe a quick voiceover are added. Finally, the video is exported out of the software and distributed to its intended audience, be that on the internet or burned to a DVD to include with the product. In AV writing, a script is created. As mentioned, this text-based document outlines where the scenario will take place, who will be featured on screen, and what they'll specifically say and do. These decisions are really important because they'll dictate production workflow. An audiovisual script goes even further than that, specifying framing information, including the focal length, commonly called shot size, and any intended camera movements, such as a pan, which is a movement from one side to the other, or even a tilt, which is an up and down movement. Shot planning requires pre-visualization, or gauging the most effective way to visually tell that story. Pre-visualization, as the name implies, requires seeing the video play out in your mind's eye beforehand. There are some important questions to ask. Is a large area around the subject, including some elements of the setting, needed to convey the message? Then perhaps a long shot, abbreviated LS, is appropriate. Framing the subject from head to toe and includes some environment for context. Will a closer shot of the subject or their actions more clearly convey that message? Well, then a medium shot framing them from the waist up can offer a clear view of their expression, gesture, or even their hands if necessary. This is the most common shot in a videographer's toolbox because it does give the viewer the sense of being in the presence of the subject for maximum clarity and identification. A medium close-up frames just the head and the shoulders for a more close and intimate view of that subject. Finally, will a visual detail related to the content help to clarify a point, process, tool, or product not visible in wider shots? A close-up of a person frames the head only to enlarge the subtleties of emotion, but of course this shot is rarely appropriate for technical videos. Instead, a close-up meant to provide a detail of the scene, referred to as a cutaway, or to get in close to something relevant or small, like a detail of the scene, might be appropriate. An extreme close-up is a very, very close shot, magnifying small details or minute adjustments. Moving to the next stage of pre-production, an important task is to cast the on-screen talent, referred to as the talent. Choosing the right person to deliver the intended message is a crucial step to communicating effectively with the viewer. Of course, an expert on the subject matter is often the appropriate talent for a technical demonstration video, since experts can confidently convey information with integrity from an informed point of view. Take Jason Levine here, worldwide Adobe Creative Cloud evangelist, known to his fans as Adobe Jesus. Levine attracts thousands of viewers worldwide for his live Adobe Audition and Premiere Pro CC demonstrations. Having mixed tracks for Hans Zimmer and Herbie Hancock, he's charismatic, knowledgeable, fun, and exciting. But what if the expert is not relatable? What if they aren't articulate or clear? What if they fidget a lot? Or what if they're too nervous to perform with confidence? The fact of the matter is that effective on-screen communication is as much about visual approachability and oral clarity as it is about information delivery. That being said, sometimes an actor can seem like an expert while engaging with the viewer effectively. Whether it's an expert or an actor, what's most important, of course, is to communicate clearly. However, that can be achieved. Another important pre-production task is choosing a location. But what makes a good one? First, it should be appropriate for the subject matter. If it's a software demo, in front of a computer makes sense. A cooking demo in the kitchen, of course. It should be free of unauthorized trademarked logos. It should have sufficient electrical outlets to support the equipment that requires power, such as a camera's AC adapter or even its battery charger. It should be free of unwanted sound bleed for clean dialogue recording. There should be no mechanical hum from appliances or technological equipment. If it's a hard-surfaced area, listen closely for reverberation echo. Steer clear of high-traffic areas where airplanes, foot traffic, or vehicles will be heard on the recording. And finally, make sure the shooting won't be unexpectedly interrupted. Once the pre-production planning is taken care of, next comes the shooting. An important question to ask is whether to do it yourself or not. There are an abundance of trained professionals out there, most charging a reasonable fee for professional video production services. According to slateandmain.com, a short corporate video runs anywhere from $500 to $2,500. However, most video producers charge a day rate rather than a flat fee. So depending on how elaborate or lengthy the video, the higher the total cost, of course. Today, however, it's relatively affordable to buy equipment and software needed to create your own video production. And online demonstrations from seemingly endless sources make acquiring the know-how to do so cheap, quick, and easy. The equipment you'll need to do it yourself includes, of course, a video camera, a tripod to hold that camera, proper illumination, which can include lighting or maybe just a reflector, a microphone and cable to record high-quality dialogue, and finally, editing software to sequence and finish the project for distribution. Here's a basic DSLR setup explained in countless YouTube video demonstrations for users to access for free. This setup here features a DSLR camera, tripod, a ring light mounted on the camera, which is good for headshots and portraits, a boom mic and stand, and an extra light for setting illumination. The camera is the most important piece of equipment. All video cameras today record in high definition, widescreen for a professional, high quality look. There are 3 grades of cameras: consumer, prosumer, and professional. Consumer cameras are cheap, but deliver inconsistent results. Prosumer cameras combine usability and low cost of consumer cameras with some advanced functions. Professional camcorders can be expensive and take the most skill to master. A good option today, as mentioned, are digital SLR cameras, DSLR, which offer good recording as well as still photography. These multifunctionality cameras make it a good investment. And bundled options offer an easy way to purchase the microphone, battery, and storage media right along with the camera. Canon's Rebel series DSLR cameras for beginners are a really good value. And these cameras utilize interchangeable lenses for beginners, so a variety of looks can be achieved with one camera body. This Canon Rebel series EOS T6i quote video creator kit costs less than $1,000 and comes with a lens, microphone, battery, and charger, as well as the SD storage media necessary to record videos. Considering lighting, here's an example of an economical kit that can offer even lighting that will be flattering to the subject, add depth and dimension to the shot, and illuminate the elements as needed. If shooting outdoors or in a well-lit area, perhaps a reflector is more appropriate, which will allow the user to bounce available light onto the subject and setting where appropriate. Soft lighting is the most flattering. It fills in harsh shadows and unflattering wrinkles, and is achieved by diffusing light, such as through a soft box seen here on the left, or even by bouncing it onto the subject with this reflector featured on the right. An important consideration when shooting is the composition. Is there just a little space above the subject's head, but not too much? Are they placed frame left or frame right along the, quote, rule of thirds grid lines for a balanced composition? Do they have adequate looking space to the side of the frame they are facing? Also, coverage should be considered, meaning that all necessary dialogue and action are captured during production. Finally, clean audio recording is so important. Bad sound pitfalls to avoid are microphone interference caused by a mic rubbing on clothing or skin, low battery hiss, undesired sound bleed like distant voices or vehicles, background mechanical hum or airiness, reverberation echo from hard surfaces, or even mumbling talent. As mentioned, you'll need a good tripod to hold that camera for a controlled professional shot. This aluminum model is economical at $119 from BH Photo Video, a leading audio-video equipment supplier. Regarding microphones, a lavalier clips to the talent's lapel and is appropriate if there isn't a lot of movement in the shot. But if there is movement, then perhaps a, quote, shotgun mic is more appropriate. Yes, we have a lot of references to guns. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. This Rode video mic comes with Canon's Rebel Series Video Creator Kit, or it can be purchased separately for about $100. The process of editing allows the user to take the recorded visuals and audio and sequence them however they want using only a computer with installed software. By combining single shots into full projects, adjusting soundtrack elements, finishing with titles and even effects like a fade or a dissolve, and then exporting that finished product, editing software today is is oftentimes cheap and generally pretty easy to use. Thanks to companies like Adobe, there are options to lease editing software for a low monthly fee, which also includes access really to the entire Adobe Creative Cloud suite. Free options include QuickTime Player, which comes pre-installed on a new Mac, or even YouTube's Creator Studio, which allows basic editing functions right there on the platform to anybody who's a user. But do I need to go to film school to learn how to use the software? Well, that's certainly an option, and we teachers want that for people and for ourselves, but it's not required anymore. Don't tell my students that. Free training via online tutorials, access through YouTube where it's free to upload and to watch millions of videos, or even a company's website connects consumers with the products that they want to learn more about. Other sites like lynda.com offer thousands of tutorial videos for a subscription fee that's substantially less than the cost of college tuition. As mentioned, YouTube's video editor can be learned through tutorials published on the website itself. QuickTime Player's editor is very easy to use with clear language accessed through limited pull-down menus. And operational knowledge on software like Adobe Premiere Pro CC, or the CC stands for Creative Cloud, for video editing can be accessed through published tutorials on sites like lynda.com, for example. You can see that they feature tutorials for all processes in creative digital production. Adobe Creative Cloud, as mentioned, is offered by subscription or purchase. This is the Adobe Premiere Pro CC editing software page where you can purchase it standalone, or you can subscribe to Adobe Creative Cloud, which includes the software for just $19.99 a month. And you can download any of those software packages on as many computers as you'd like. And Adobe offers a beautiful set of tutorials on their own adobe.helpx.com site, at lynda.com, or even on their YouTube page, seen here. In conclusion, while rumors of Hollywood studios hiring hundreds of cast and crew and spending hundreds of millions of dollars to produce spectacles from our wildest dreams are definitely true, Basic video production is a manageable step-by-step process that today can yield effective results with relatively small investment, especially when compared to the reach potential of videos through free online platforms like YouTube. Thank you so much.
So we do have 2 slides that follow at the end of the pack that show all of our resources. So if anyone is interested in those as well. But we would be very happy to take any questions.
And you could also use the chat to, if you don't want to speak out loud.
Oh, it looks like we have a shy group.
Shy group.
Or wait, we just did a really thorough job.
So you guys do have microphone rights, or you can type your questions right into the chat window. I have a couple of questions. I'll let attendees have a chance to ask their questions, but I have a few.
Well, why don't you start it off? Maybe folks will
throw it out there. Okay, so when I think about video production in terms of being a technical communicator, technical writer, I tend to think of software demos. And so I have never put a live human being in any of these.
Mm-hmm.
So should I think about that? As I'm trying to make them as short as possible because I realize my audience wants to get their answer quickly and then get back to work.
Sure. One of the main points that Stacy brought up was that sometimes the SME interview is exactly the person to give an authoritative take on the information. You just have to check, so maybe do a dry run with them to make sure that they are not a fidgeter or a mumbler, which won't help you at all. But if everything's good, you should not hesitate to put someone in front of the camera. If, for example, the SME just doesn't want to do it, getting an actor to go ahead and give the lines will look very professional. Anything you'd like to add to that?
I would just say that when I refer to software demos, which I do a lot, obviously I teach software, and there, especially with Adobe Creative Cloud, there are updates every single year, and you know, I've got to stay on top of my game in terms of teaching those. And when I just go to find something quickly, I actually don't prefer to see a person. I would probably click on your tutorials, Vicki, over someone like Jason Levine's, where he's featured, and he even does a kind of interaction chat room type space because he has viewers from all over the world. So I think it really depends on your audience and what they're there for. I think most people watch somebody like Jason Levine where they learn the software from scratch, or even more advanced functions that, you know, where the answers are harder to find. Whereas me and probably most people who seek out software demos just want to learn something quick and be able to do it. So I guess that's the best answer I could give.
And I would add that it's part of our assessment of the message and what our audience like best. What's their learning preference around that message? So in the identification of our audience and our message, that's really going to lead us to, should this just be, you know, quick and straight to, you know, the screen, or are these people starting out and it might actually calm their nerves if they see a smiling face first before they dive in. So it really falls in those steps that we were talking about earlier.
Well, and I'm thinking also the actual content, like if it's an advanced process, but they're already familiar with how the software operates, they might want to just do that sort of targeted get in, get out quickly. Whereas at their first experience, they might want to see that smiling face, that confident, hear the confident voice, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's all in assessing our audience and our message.
So we have a question from Kathy M. on the chat window. Can you guys see that question, or would you like for me to read it?
Yes, I can. I can see it. And her question is, do you have tips for the project management aspects of video production? How to organize, communicate, keep on track? And I will say that particular role, if you're talking about a big production, you'll have someone specific that is passionate about those skills and that are really good at them. And those people are called the producers. And there's a real reason why the Oscars, when they hand out Best Picture, they give it to the producer, because producers essentially make everything happen. You know, a big production you couldn't accomplish without those things that the producer's doing, like making a budget, like seeking out fundraising, or even just making a shooting schedule, or arranging catering and locations, exactly, insurance, etc. And those skills are actually, there are a lot of books out there if you're looking for resources, whether you're looking to produce documentaries, corporate videos, even fiction projects. There are lots of great books out there, trade books, that specialize in those different areas of producing. But I would say the best advice I could give you is learn Excel, because Excel is kind of the go-to for all of those organization tasks in video production. Although there are specialized software out there that, you know, you can write your script and export a schedule and do all of those tasks in the software. But if you know Excel, you don't need to spend extra money.
And I would also add that there's not a lot written for the business side, for the technical communication. This is really a burgeoning opportunity. So a lot of books will have excessive points because they are geared for Hollywood productions and full-fledged. So if you're at your business and you want to tape a SME interview and you want to show them changing out a component, you don't have to worry about insurance and finding financial backers. I mean, so there's not really just a punch list for, hey, the technical communicators video guide. Maybe Stacy and I will write that and become very famous.
Yes, famous, yes.
Looks like there's another question.
From Karen, yes, good. Karen's asking about templates for video production. I assume you mean graphic elements, logos, or motion graphics.
Design, font, color, artistic effects.
Yes,
okay.
yes. And actually, and I apologize because I'm always referring to Adobe Creative Cloud, but this is kind of the standard nowadays for student and independent production. And frankly, even on bigger productions are now starting to use this great software that's so integratable. And I will say that Adobe After Effects, while it is a motion graphics and animation software, they do have a number of really gorgeous, advanced templates inside their software where you can just edit them and add your own name. And you're right, that really will help to bring a production together. It will make it look very polished and professional. And, you know, regardless if it's just a template that you slightly alter the color or the font or the wording of. And in fact, nowadays, students are quite obsessed with creating production company logos, you know, even when a production company, quote unquote, does not exist, because they're flashy, they impress people. And so nowadays you absolutely have to have those elements to bring it all together.
And your question about using the same template to promote ongoing viewership, that's right. That's branding, and people will come to know either the color that you're using, could be your corporate color or a logo or something, and that's always a good idea. Even our presentation here, we've branded with STC IDL, and so you're absolutely spot on there with that. Let's see, Dawn says, how do you adapt your writing for the screen? Screenwriting is different from technical writing. Absolutely. So I'm assuming that you're a technical writer. So what I would suggest is that you write what you would share in a document, and then you try saying it out loud. You try reading it to someone else, and see if it has a flow. Any thoughts?
Well, the way I'm reading this question is, and prefacing my answer, I want to say to you, Don, that you're absolutely right. Writing fiction for, movies, Hollywood movies, if you will, is a different format than the format Professor Beery showed us at the end of her portion, which is that dual column audiovisual script. Now, I want to say you should take our class here, our screenwriting class, Don, because we're going to actually, and I'm teaching it this upcoming semester, we're teaching the corporate script, we're teaching the PSA and ad script, we're also teaching that fiction script. And I will say a major difference between writing in those two different formats is that with the audiovisual script, you include those camera angles, that framing information and camera movements, whereas in a fiction script, you omit all of those things, assuming the screenwriter is a different person than is going to be directing the video, which is who makes all of those shot size and camera movement decisions. It is difficult to adapt between the two, but when you think about the purposes of each and the chain of command in the production hierarchy, which really with corporate videos, there isn't one. Generally, the person writing is the client or the video producer in conjunction with the client, and then that same person is going to go out and make that project. So those camera angles and camera movements are very useful in that sense, where they can be distracting and frankly quite annoying to a director who's now taking a fiction script and is going to turn that into a film.
Yeah, I would say the audio video script is the best tool for technical writers, because it follows the same logic when we are creating a document. What do we need to share? What's pertinent? What's too much? What's too little? What does this audience need? All those questions, they're the same that we would ask ourselves in an audio video script. So looking at that kind of script and camera shots and such, that's exactly where you would need to be. I hope that made sense, Don.
Well, I'm looking at Emma's question here about mixing animation with voiceover. I mean, I would say for you, the great thing, if you are going to be using Adobe After Effects, Adobe products have voiceover tools built right in. So if you have a microphone for your computer, and I will say we're not using a separate external microphone, which would give you a more isolated professional quality. We're just using our built-in computer microphone, which is, and I'm going to throw out a technical term here, it's omnidirectional, meaning it's going to pick up, anything around the room that makes noise. If I knock on this thing on that bookshelf way over there, you'll hear it equally, where a more professional microphone is going to just pick up audio coming from the direction it's facing. So we call that a unidirectional microphone. So that would be what I suggest. You can record the voiceover separately and put it underneath your animation in the timeline right there in the animation software. So there probably won't be any reason for you to use a video editing software, because the animation software is also a nonlinear editing software. I hope that helps.
Oh, sorry, we do have another question. For the purposes of creating employee videos, such as onboarding, do you have any recommendations to make them ADA or 508 compliant? Yeah, well, Of course, here at the university, we lean on a department that helps us with compliance. We also have lawyers who can answer any thorny questions. I'm assuming your corporation might have a legal department. You could approach your HR department and ask them, what's required, best practices for this ADA compliance, and hopefully they're going to have some guidance for you. Otherwise, you have a little bit of legwork if you want to make sure, and your company doesn't have any procedures in place, make sure that it is closed captioned, that they're that it meets all of them. It's able to be resized on screens for visual impairment. And
I will add some things, because ironically, I'm the perfect person to answer this, because I spent the past 4 months creating over 400 minutes of video when I converted one of my courses to online, and also a feature film that I finished just earlier last year. We just closed caption that as well. And so you can pay someone to close caption your videos. Generally, they charge quite a bit, frankly. There are services online that say, we'll do it for $99, but let's just say you get what you pay for in terms of closed captioning. What you want is an exact rendition of what's being said. But the less you pay, the more those captions are auto-generated, meaning they're bad. They don't often reflect what's actually being said, and quite the contrary. So the best practice here, if you want to dive in and do it yourself, right there in Adobe Premiere, the video editing software, there is a captioning tool, and you sort of just type in the dialogue yourself and you place it right there in the timeline over the shot. You can trim it out to be as long as your shot, and you can control the speed of the text in that way. But it is time consuming, laborious, and tedious. So if that doesn't sound that fun, then an alternative, what I used for my online class conversion was Kaltura. Kaltura is a great video tool to, well, it's multifunction. So Vicki was talking about doing software demonstrations. Kaltura will screen record. It will record your voice and sync it right up, and then you just press publish, and it publishes right on the site, and Kaltura generates closed captions, and they're pretty good right there in the software. You don't have to do anything. Yaja is a new one we're using now. We're not using Kaltura anymore. It's Y-A-J-A, Y-U-J-A. And that also generates auto captions. Now, YouTube has an auto captioning service as well, but it's really bad, and I do not recommend it. But there are free options out there, and I commend you for wanting to make your content ADA compliant. Yes.
Kathy, Kaltura, you're close. It's a K-U-L-T-U-R-A. And you'll be able to find that.
Is it K-A-L? Kaltura?
Oh, it might be.
Yeah, I think it is.
We don't use it anymore. Sorry. It might be K-A-L. So I remember the K. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, that's correct, Kathy. Kaltura.
Building as you go rather than closed captioning afterwards. Yeah, that is a real good idea, Roxy. Doing it as you go. Absolutely. Hopefully getting some help along the way. Anybody else? We've probably exceeded our time.
No, we are at 2:28 Eastern from what I see. So we have 2 minutes legally, and then again, I apologize for the technical difficulties that we had getting started. We did start about 8 minutes late, so.
Vicki, did you have another question?
I did want to just tell everybody that you will get an email from me a few minutes after the webinar. It will have contact information for Professors Beery and Barton. It will have a link to the YouTube recording. We are recording today, and I will upload that to the Instructional Design and Learning's YouTube channel. My sense is they will want to get the slides because you have hot links in your reference slides. Is that correct? Is it already?
Did you put hot links?
I
Hypertext?
don't-
I don't think we have hypertext there.
No, I don't think so. I can't advance to the last two slides, but
Okay.
There we go.
oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I guess so.
That was
yeah,
a
that's
while
our.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, sure, share 'em.
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, the YouTube recording won't have hot links. So I'm thinking that sharing the slides will be a good idea. That way people don't have to try to read the screen and type, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And anything else that I can think of. And so you'll get contact information and you'll get the slides, you'll get the video. And oh, the other thing is we're starting to do surveys after our webinars, and it's basically just a couple of questions. You know, how did you like it? What other topics would you like to hear from? Those kinds of things. So, yeah. So
Well, thank you so much, everybody.
So we're going to Denver for the next summit. That's your hometown, is that right?
Yes.
So we can see you face to face?
Yeah, absolutely. Come one, come all. Our local chapter, the Rocky Mountain chapter, will be hosting. We're very excited.
Well, that is awesome. So this is not goodbye. This is just until then.
Yes.
All right, you guys, I'm going to stop the recording.
Thanks so much, everybody. Bye.